So loves, I want to tell you all about the sponsor of today's video, which is Best Fiends. Best Fiends is the only game that I've been playing recently, and I am literally obsessed with it. Now, let me tell y'all all about how this game came to be. Basically, loves, a meteor smashed into Mount Boom, which has led to mutant slugs invading all over Best Fiends land. And the little creatures need your help in restoring peace in their land. For each level that you play, there are different colored objects, there are funky mushrooms, leaves, and big juicy strawberries, just to name a few. And the aim of the game is to connect as many of these things together as you possibly can. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but Anna, what is the point in collecting all of these random things? The Best Fiends are under attack! Well, you guys. The more of these objects that you can collect from the same kind will go towards the Best Fiends in helping them fight off the mutant slugs. What makes this game even better though is that there are thousands of levels, so there is no time to get bored when you can be helping these little cute beings on their way back to peace and harmony on their planet. Best Fiends is available on the App Store or the Google Play Store and has already climbed its way up to #1 in so many different countries. So I mean, what are you even waiting for? Go to the App Store now and get playing.
It's just a bizarre case.
And then, on that stormy Thursday morning in August, she completely vanished. Would anyone ever figure out the truth about what happened to Lee? You might agree that the best time to try and get away with doing something awful is when everyone else is just trying to stay safe, when everyone is hiding indoors. And in this case from Memphis, Tennessee, the hurricane hid a huge mystery. After all, it's pretty normal to be scared of storms, especially hurricanes. But when a girl who's barely in her teens goes missing from the family home, and during a storm as violent as Hurricane Andrew, it just might make her disappearance even creepier. This case is really rough, so batten down your hatches as we take a closer look into the story of the 13-year-old girl who was abducted during a hurricane. Hurricane Andrew was thundering towards Tupelo, Mississippi on August 27, 1992, and Vicki Felton knew that her teenage daughter, Lee Marine Oki, was terrified of storms. She even had cuddled up in bed with her mom just the night before because she was so frightened of the fierce weather. Now, it was almost 8 a.m. Lee was still at home because school didn't start until September, but after just 1 hour at work, Vicki was getting worried. For some reason, Lee had stopped answering her mom's calls. Remember, this was 1992, nobody really had a cell phone, and there wasn't any kind of messaging service either. That's much more terrifying to imagine than the hurricane, right? Sorry guys. Anyway, Vicki came home again to check on her daughter. When she got back home after a very short drive through some awful weather, she saw that the garage was open and the outside light was on. That meant that somebody had only just walked past it. So Vicki rushed into the house calling out for Lee in every room, but there was no answer. Lee just didn't seem to be in the house. Vicki later told investigators, "I went into her bedroom, her favorite blanket was crumpled up on the floor, and I was very scared." And even more worrying, there was a dark red liquid smeared on the walls and pooling on the floor. Vicki frantically searched all over, but there was still no sign of Lee. And with the hurricane so close by, it didn't seem like she would have run out into that weather. So where the heck was she? By about 9 a.m., and totally terrified for her daughter's safety, Vicki called 911. Maybe Lee had just run away? Or had something way more sinister been going on this whole time? Well, first, here's a little bit more about Lee. She was born in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1979. As you can probably tell from her middle name, she kind of started out as a military brat. Both her parents served in the US Army and met in California. But when her mom and dad split up in 1981, they moved to Tupelo, Mississippi. Her dad, Donald Oki, went back to serve in the Army. He went to live a long way away at a military base in Germany. Lee actually went to stay with him, and they played around learning German and riding bikes together. Her dad described her as a smart, sweet little girl who liked to be hugged. She liked pizza, she liked dogs. Other than just a few visits with her dad, Lee had mostly stayed with her mom in Memphis. Now, Lee really loved animals, especially the local horses and her pet cat. While Lee really did prefer animals to most people, she was also good friends with a couple of their older neighbors and with just one or two other people at her high school. Lee also had one close friend called John Bradley. She'd ride the bus with him, and they kind of protected each other. And then, on that stormy Thursday morning in August, she completely vanished. Vicki Felton put out an appeal on the local news.
Please go out and search your property, have your neighbors and friends go search their property so that we can find my daughter.
After Lee went missing, of course, the police searched all over the area near her home. But even the canine puppers had no luck finding any clues. Obviously, all of the hurricane flooding made finding scent tracks almost impossible. Although, one dog was very interested in one particular storm drain. But when investigators checked it, there was nothing in there. What had happened to Lee was becoming a real mystery. But someone had to know the truth, right? Now, the investigators had found hair and blood on the wall, but it also seemed like whoever was there had tried to clean this up before they'd escaped. Even creepier, they'd probably only left the house barely 1 or 2 minutes before Lee's mom had arrived. Remember that the garage door was open and the outside light was still on? Yeah, super weird, right? Even stranger, some of her things were missing, including her shorts, a pair of shoes, and a sleeping bag. So maybe she had run away? Or the sleeping bag had been used for something else? Maybe as a way to abduct her, but why take her shoes? Of course, Lee's biological dad came back to Mississippi to join in the search. He was living in America again, but moved in nearby to keep up the search. But he didn't have high hopes of finding Lee. As more time passed, he became pretty sure that someone had already ended her life on that morning. But nobody could prove anything, don't forget. While the scene didn't look good, there was just no way to tie anything to any person, not even inside the home. And a lot of people already thought that Lee had some worrying issues at home. John Bradley definitely thought she had some trouble there.
She would talk to me like she would talk to anybody. Like she would talk to another girl or another guy. And one thing I remember talking about is when she would come and get on the bus with the bruises on her legs. And that's when she was sitting on the bus with me and I would see them on her legs. She'd wear like a dress or shorts. I'm like, what happened? And she'd always say, I fell or...
So things weren't great in the one place where she should be safe. Not that it was ever proven. One red flag was just how upset she'd been about returning home after summer camp. Lee actually started crying about having to go back home. Well, either she was having such a great time she never wanted to leave camp, or something much more sinister seemed to be happening. But there was constant suspicion about Lee's home life, like something truly disturbing might be happening. Remember Lee's friend John Bradley? He often hung out with Lee on the bus rides to and from school. John said he was horrified when Lee turned up one morning with a really nasty injury.
And she got on the bus one time with a big black guy. I'm like, what happened? Like, the horse kicked me. And all of a sudden, the other kids started asking, whoa, what happened? They see a little kid get on the bus with a whole side of face about black and blue.
He never saw anyone, not a teacher or a counselor, so anything about that shocking bruise. But then there was never enough proof about any of it. And when she vanished, it just left even more questions. And it wasn't long before the entire town started to believe that Lee's mom had something to do with the case. Or at least they were sure that Vicki knew something about what had really happened to Lee. These rumors would eventually get so bad that Vicki eventually fled town altogether. Lee's dad also thought it was likely that Vicki, who he described as a neat freak, might have been more involved than she let on. In an interview, he explained why this was. Just the time frame. There wouldn't be enough time for someone to come to the house when Vicki left at 7:50 a.m., kill Lee, and attempt a cleanup, and leave before Vicki came back at 8:45. This all while a hurricane is going on? Who comes into a house and kills someone, then attempts to clean up the scene? why clean it up? Now, Vicky would eventually fail 3 entire lie detector or polygraph tests. She took one with the police right after Lee vanished, and 2 more with the FBI. And, well, that's pretty weird because she'd also studied interrogation techniques in the Army. But bear in mind that those lie detector tests just aren't very scientific. They aren't even allowed as real evidence in court. Still, failing one 3 times in a row really isn't a good look, even if her daughter was missing, which would definitely explain her stress levels. Sheriff Jim Johnson, who was an investigator at the time, was pretty sure that the polygraph had helped narrow down the suspects.
You can waste a lot of time chasing the wrong theory or chasing the wrong idea or chasing the wrong person, and a polygraph ruled that out to me. If you have an individual that you are a pretty good suspect on it and you've got some pretty good information and you have a great polygraph examiner that knows what they're doing, you can use that polygraph as a tool to say, okay, are we on the right track? Are we looking at the right person?
And Vicky's current partner, Barney Yarborough, had sailed through the polygraph with no suspicious reactions at all. Now, it seems really likely that Vicky had known her attacker. There was no sign of a break-in, but something awful did seem to have gone down. In the house, they'd found 3 signs of blood, and even worse, Lee's nightgown had been hidden at the bottom of a laundry basket. So it looked like someone had changed or taken Lee's clothes. And whoever had done this had literally just gotten away right before Lee's mom made it home. If the story about the light being on is true, Jim Johnson even said,
The way things went. It's just a bizarre case. It really is. It's one that's baffling.
But there were a few other possible suspects in the area. Lee's mom often pointed to a man called Oscar McKinley, Mike Kearns. He knew Lee from Sunday school and had offered to take her horseback riding. He was also a deeply disgusting person who had kidnapped and violated a girl who was barely in 9th grade just a few months after Lee vanished. He did at least serve time for this. That charmer had also kidnapped a couple and violated the woman right after being freed from prison. I mean, he is a pretty good suspect. The theory is that he would have easily been able to get into the house because Lee knew him from church. But he was never charged with what might have happened to Lee. The police still don't have any answers. Then, just 1 month after Lee had disappeared, in late September 1992, her stepdad received a creepy package. It contained Lee's glasses and nothing else. But this did get the FBI involved because it looked like a kidnapping. However, law enforcement figured that if it was a kidnapping, then just sending the glasses made no sense at all. The police chief in 1992, Bart Aguirre, said, "There was no ransom letter or anything like that. With those glasses, you would think that if it was an actual kidnapping, you would have expected a little more to come along with that." Of course, the authorities searched the package for any other clues, but nothing turned up there either. Even the envelope had been sealed with water, no spit. And that seemed to be the only lead for a very long time. And some of the investigators felt that they'd been sent the glasses to deliberately confuse the case. So, would anyone ever figure out the truth about what happened to Lee? Even if there were a lot of suspicions, nothing could be proved. And then, over a year later, some female remains would be found nearby. And it really looked like that discovery would clear up at least some of the mystery around poor Lee. On November 9th, 1993, a local paper reported that a farmer had made a shocking discovery. He'd uncovered a skull in a ditch right beside his soybean field. At first, the coroner who analyzed it thought it belonged to Lee, but I'm really sorry to tell you guys what happened next, because nothing about this case is that easy. The statement about finding Lee was retracted pretty fast. In fact, after just 2 days, they realized that the skull had actually been a woman named Pollyanna Sue Keith. Poor Pollyanna had vanished back in March that same year. So the authorities were no closer to solving Lee's disappearance. And they never found out who had put Pollyanna into that ditch either. And even now, over 30 years later, It all remains a huge mystery. I really wish there was more closure for everyone involved. Someone has to know something, right? But Lee's mom is still pretty high up on the list of suspects. Bart Aguirre sure thinks so anyway. You still can't eliminate Vicky. There are still too many unanswered questions. I don't know if that is unusual for somebody to go off to work and say, well, I'll just leave Lee, but I'm going to call and check on her. Why check on her that soon after she just left her? But why would she leave things in such a mess if she was such a neat freak? Was it an argument with Lee that got out of control? Or was it someone that nobody in that house should ever have trusted? While Lee is still missing, if she's alive, she'd be in her 40s now. The case still gets people calling every month or so, mostly with old leads that police have already checked out, but anyone with any information should call Crime Stoppers of Northeast Mississippi at 800-773-TIPS or email at helpfindmissingleemarine.okie. There's also a Facebook page you can connect with, and I hope someone out there can clear this mystery up. Maybe then Lee's mom and dad can finally get some closure. This reminds me so much of my video on poor Janelle Matthews. She vanished in 1984, and the case was only solved a long time afterwards. What do you think about Lee's disappearance? Did Lee's mom hurt her, or was it someone else that nobody would have even thought of? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.